Thank you very much for this Hungarian context. One, we can give you the microphone to Michal for some Polish.
Yeah. So let's jump into Polish context, and I will try to tell you a short story about the destruction of the rule of law in Poland within the last 8 years. Unfortunately, Orban had 30 years to destroy the system. Our dictator Kaczynski had only 8 years, so we are in a little bit better situation, but there are so many similarities with what you described, David. But there are at the same time so many differences in our system, in the destruction of the Polish system, the rule of law. Of course, it started, the assault, constitutional assault started from the Constitutional Court. Constitutional Court is and was important from the point of view of autocrats to be able to pass a law in parliament and not have any systemic effective constitutional control from the independent court. So they did it actually very effectively within 1 year. So we captured the Constitutional Court within 1 year. Since the end of 2016, they started at the end of 2015, and since the end of 2016, we do not have independent Constitutional Court. This is, using your metaphor, the theater of puppets as well. When we have 15 members of this court, which are appointed by the governing party. And more, we have 3 of them, which are not judges of the Constitutional Court. 3 of them are, we call them double judges, or because in 2015, the government used a very simple trick. Maybe it's not a trick, it's a very primitive tool. They just nullified the appointments of the previous parliament of 3 judges, change the arithmetics inside the court to be able to go forward. And so the 3 of the appointed judges of the Constitutional Court were now nullified, and the president appointed 3 other new judges, which we call double judges. So that situation was challenged on the level of the European courts. It was challenged in the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg in 2021. We had the judgment in Cell Floor case, and in that case, the Court of Human Rights clarified and then confirmed that these Constitutional Court working independent with these double judges is not the independent impartial court in the meaning of the convention. So it violates Article 6. So the Constitutional Court, first target of the constitutional assault. Then, of course, the prosecutor office. That was also very important because in 2016 they joined the position of the Minister of Justice and the Prosecutor General, and they changed the law on the prosecutor office. So since March 2016, the prosecutor office is fully subordinated to the government and to the Minister of Justice. So actually, since that time, the prosecutor office is working as the agency for the government, not the independent prosecutor office. So since that time, nobody from the circle of the government is indicted or charged by this prosecutor office. And since that time, we had a lot of charges against the members of the opposition, against the members of civil society, protesters, demonstrators, and so on and so on. Next, I think the most important target was the Council of Judicial, National Council of the Judiciary, which is the backbone of the Polish judicial system. Because from the constitutional point of view, the council is to protect, to be the guardian of the independence of judiciary and independence and impartiality of the judges. And from a practical point of view, this is the body that appoints the candidates for judges and for promotion of judges to higher instances, also to the Supreme Court. So we discussed today about the model, model of the council, how it should look like. In our constitution, the council of the judiciary consists of three branches represented. So we have representatives of the executive power, we have the Minister of Justice inside, we have the appointee of the president, and we have the representatives of legislative power as well. We have six representatives of the Senate and the lower chamber of the parliament, and we have the majority of this council, which are judges that should be appointed by judges, by the representatives of the judiciary. But it is a vague provision, unclear provision in the Constitution. So the government used that unclearness of the provision in the Constitution, and they said, okay, right now these representatives of the judiciary are to be appointed by the parliament, by the supermajority of the parliament. So they changed the law in 2017, and they introduced it in 2018. So since 2018, the Council of the Judiciary is fully politicized. It's like the factory of judges. Since that time, they appointed to the system and promoted 3,000 judges, which we call neo-judges. So these, we have 10,000 judges in Poland. So almost 1/3 of them are neo-judges improperly appointed by this council. And it is not, of course, my opinion or an opinion of the majority of lawyers, but it was also challenged by both European courts, by the Court of Justice and the Court of Human Rights, in many cases, when they confirmed, I mean, the Court of Justice and then the Court of Human Rights, they confirmed that this council is not the independent body that is able to promote or to appoint independent and impartial judges. But we have this huge amount of neo-judges inside the system, which is a huge problem, and the government, the Minister of Justice, is openly declaring that we are going to appoint as many neo-judges as we can to come to the moment that it is not able to be converted. So the National Judiciary Council next, I think, the most important violation of the system of justice. And finally, in 2017, 2018, they started to destroy the Supreme Court. When they changed the law on the Supreme Court, the first idea in 2017 brought by the Minister of Justice in the government was to expel all the justices of the Supreme Court from the Supreme Court. The horrors for lawyers, but it happened. They passed the law. The law was at the desk of the president and signed, and at that time, Polish civil society and legal community reacted very strongly. People to the streets, and we had the protests all over Poland, in every place where the court is located, which is around 300 places in Poland. So huge demonstrations in vacation in July 2017, and after these first 13 days protests, the president decided to veto this law, saying that the justice of the Supreme Court had to be expelled. But it was a very smart trick from the point of view of the government, because they waited a couple of months and they introduced again the law into the parliament in the late autumn. And they passed this law in November, and the president signed the new law in December, just before Christmas, saying that not all of them, but 40% justices of the Supreme Court are to be expelled. And those who are 65 and over 65, including the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, even if she was in the middle of her constitutional term of office. The term of office in the Constitution is 6 years. So she was in the middle of her term of office, but they said, oh, you should be retired because you're 65. And that was also, maybe I will tell a few words about the litigation two litigations in the Court of Justice at that time, 2018. Because first was the infringement procedure started by the Commission. That was a representative litigation because that was actually the first infringement procedure based only on the Article 19 of the treaty. And they started the treaty that procedure on the 2nd of July 2018, and in October, 19th of October 2018, the Court of Justice issued the interim measures saying that these justices of the Supreme Court should be able to get back to their adjudication, and Chief Justice should get back to her office. So that was the first huge victory of European Union institutions working together with the Polish civil society, because civil society in Poland was very active on that matter. We set up the very broad coalition, which was called Europe Do Not Surrender, to give support to the European Commission that Polish civil society is taking care of this issue, and we pressed the European Commission to start to trigger this procedure. So at the same time, these justices of the Supreme Court went to us, to civil society. At that time, legal community created Justice Defense Committee, which was a coalition of 30 organizations inside them. The Association of Judges, the Association of Lawyers and Prosecutors, the Amnesty International, the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights, and a couple of other NGOs, those mainly who are involved in the battle for the rule of law. And the Justice Defense Committee was created to support judges who are repressed in Poland, those independent judges like Michal, who is sitting here, who felt strong enough to be independent of and to issue independent rulings, not to be afraid of repression of the disciplinary proceedings. Some of them had like 20 disciplinary proceedings against them. Some of them had criminal proceedings, of course, based on fake charges, but still they have it. So those persons are really serious. You can imagine that we have more than 200 proceedings against Polish judges under the umbrella of Justice Defense Committee. So it's a huge number of the repressions. So the role of Polish lawyers, the role of the Polish civil society is very, very important in that battle. Coming back to these litigations in front of both European courts, because at that time when we created Justice Defense Committee, Justice of the Supreme Court went to us and asked for the protection, for the legal protection. And at that time, when government created a special chamber, they completely changed the system of the disciplinary proceedings against judges. And they created a special chamber in the Supreme Court, which was called disciplinary chamber. And that chamber was fully staffed by people selected by this new council. So they were completely loyal to the government, mostly prosecutors, very closely related to the Minister of Justice and the Prosecutor General at the same time. So that institution was designed to remove all the independent judges from the system. So as we used to say, they had a pump. They had a pump. On one side of the pump was this National Judiciary Council to pump into the system new judges, neo judges who are loyal to the government. And the other side of the pump was the disciplinary chamber to throw out from the system those who are not loyal, who are not following the line of the party or of the ruling party. And these justices of the Supreme Court, which were supposed to be removed from the Supreme Court, went to us and asked for the protection. And on the national level, we did not have any effective tool to protect. because we would have to go to the disciplinary chamber. It was completely subordinated to the government. So that was not the court in the meaning of the European and Polish constitutional standards. So we jumped to the Court of Justice through the preliminary question proceedings. And that's how we started the AK case, when we represented 3 judges, Supreme Court and the Supreme Administrative Court. And finally, in 2019, the Court of Justice issued the decision, the ruling in this case, in the AK case. So they described the criteria, and on the basis of this criteria, it seemed that this National Judicial Council is not independent body, and the disciplinary chamber is not the court in the meaning of the European standard. And this case went back to Poland, to the Polish Supreme Court, and all of the justices of the Supreme Court, which left the Supreme Court, I mean 60 justices, the independent old judges of the Supreme Court, they issued the resolution of the joint chambers of the Supreme Court in January 2020. They said that those who are appointed to the system by the new National Judicial Council are not properly appointed judges. So if you challenge them, if you file a motion to exclude them, you're entitled to do, and the court should exclude those from the system. So I will try to finish with the good news at the end, like David, that even if our government is ignoring these rulings of both courts, both European courts, Court of Justice and Court of Human Rights, and they openly ignore these and not implementing these judgments. These judgments are bringing the tools for Polish judges like much, so they are able to issue the judgment on the basis of the rulings of the Court of Justice and Court of Human Rights. Of course, they are repressed by the government after that, but still they are able to issue the independent judgments based on these rulings. And I believe that within the next couple of months and couple of years, we will be able to restore the system of the rule of law, restore the system of the independence of judiciary based on these rulings. And the last issue is the name you have heard, Lex Tusk, which was very recently adopted new legislation by Parliament. They decided to appoint a special committee, special commission, in the quasi court, which is not a court because it's a political body appointed by the parliament, by the majority of the parliament. So it will be the 9 guys appointed by the ruling party. But they have the competences of the prosecutor office, they have the competence of the court, so they can punish the members of the opposition. And this is the idea before the election, to punish members of the opposition and to enable them to start in the election. So the good news is that the government realized that they did not capture the courts finally, so they cannot rely on these EU judges, they cannot rely on the courts because they can see, they can face every day the independent and impartial judgments of the court. That's why they decided to create this special unconstitutional body, which is a political commission.
Very much. You've mentioned